Your husband is standing at a hotel check-in desk in Paris, handing a clerk a credit card that has just been permanently frozen. A bride in a white dress is walking out the back door of her own wedding reception while 150 guests stare at their phones in absolute silence. And a man is sitting in the pitch-black darkness of his own living room, locked inside by smart technology he installed himself, waiting for the police to arrive. Stay with me. In our last video, we talked about discovery, the forgotten receipts, the hidden cameras, the digital footprints that expose a lie. Today, we are talking about what happens next. We are talking about the response. Because when a betrayal is finally uncovered, there are two kinds of people in this world. The first kind screams, they cry, they throw clothes from the balcony at midnight and demand answers in the driveway. That reaction is human, it is understandable, and it accomplishes almost nothing. The second kind does something far more dangerous. They discover that their entire life has been a carefully constructed lie, and they do not make a single sound. They smile, they make dinner, they sleep next to the person who betrayed them, and over the following days or weeks or sometimes months, they quietly and methodically build something the cheater never saw coming. Today, you are going to meet 5 people who belong to the second category. These are 5 true, documented stories of calculated, patient, and entirely legal revenge. Stories where the cheater didn't just get caught, they lost everything. Their money, their reputation, their career, and in one case, their freedom, because they made the mistake of underestimating the person they thought would simply fall apart. Welcome back to Venture and Karma. Hit the like button right now if you believe that patience is the most dangerous weapon a betrayed person can carry. And drop a number 1 in the comments if you have ever had to smile at someone who had no idea what was coming. Let's get into it. Story number 1, the one-way ticket. There is an unspoken rule that most people consider basic human decency. You do not use your partner's hard-earned assets to fund your affair. Marcus broke that rule spectacularly. His wife, Claire, was a senior logistics manager at a global shipping company. Her job required her to travel constantly, which meant she had spent years accumulating an enormous bank of frequent flyer miles, elite hotel status, and premium credit card points. She was, in the language of the travel world, a platinum everything. Marcus worked from home as a freelance consultant. He had no status, no miles, and no points of his own. In October, Marcus told Claire he had a crucial networking conference in Paris. He asked if he could use some of her airline miles to book the flight, explaining that his business account was running low after a slow quarter. Claire, who had always been generous with him, agreed without hesitation. She not only transferred the miles, but used her platinum hotel status to book him into a luxury suite overlooking the Seine, at a rate that would have cost a normal guest $400 per night. Claire kissed him goodbye at the terminal and told him to enjoy Paris. What Marcus did not know was that Claire had a habit from her logistics career that she never turned off. She tracked things: shipments, invoices, itineraries, passenger lists. It was not paranoia, it was simply how her brain operated. 1 week after booking the tickets, she logged into the airline portal to confirm the miles had transferred correctly. There were 2 tickets on the booking. She opened the passenger manifest. The second ticket belonged to a 24-year-old barista who worked at the coffee shop 2 blocks from their house, the same coffee shop Marcus visited every single morning. Claire closed the laptop. She sat with that information for exactly 48 hours. She did not confront him. She did not call him. She did not send a single message. She watched the flight tracking app confirm they had landed. She watched her credit card app show the pre-authorization charge from the Paris hotel, confirming they had checked in. She made herself a cup of tea, and then she went to work with the calm, focused precision of someone who manages global logistics for a living. Step 1. She logged into the airline portal and canceled both return tickets. Because the original booking was made with her miles, the full refund went directly back into her account. Step 2. She called her credit card company. She reported that her husband's supplemental card had been stolen while he was traveling abroad. The fraud department froze every card on the account within minutes. Step 3. She called the hotel in Paris directly. She spoke with the concierge and explained that she was the primary account holder and that the guests currently occupying the room had not been authorized to charge to her name. The hotel, facing a liability issue, immediately locked the keycards and placed a payment hold on the suite. Any further charges would require a new card presented in person at the front desk. Marcus and his mistress came back from a romantic dinner along the Seine to find their keycards no longer worked. They went to the lobby. The clerk asked for a card. Marcus handed over the joint credit card. Declined. He tried his personal debit card, which was linked to the account Claire had quietly emptied at their local branch. Declined. Marcus called Claire. She let it ring twice. She answered on the third call. She listened to him panic for 60 full seconds without interrupting. She listened to him explain that something had gone wrong with the cards, that the hotel was giving them trouble, that he needed her to transfer some money right now because it was a real emergency. When he finished, Claire said very quietly, "The weather in Paris looks beautiful this time of year. I hope you and your friend enjoy the rest of your new life together." She hung up. Marcus spent 2 nights in a budget hostel in the 11th arrondissement before scraping together enough borrowed cash from acquaintances to book the cheapest possible return flight home on a low-cost carrier. His mistress flew home separately on her own money and did not respond to his messages for 3 weeks. When Marcus finally walked back through the front door of their house, his belongings were in a storage unit. His key no longer fit the lock, and a letter from Claire's attorney was taped to the door with his name on it. Story number 2. The Digital Toast. Weddings are supposed to be the beginning of something. For Emily, it was the final move in a game that had been in progress for 3 weeks. 3 weeks before the ceremony, Emily was searching for a catering contract on her fiancé's laptop. She needed the vendor's phone number. Instead of finding the contract, she found a hidden folder buried inside a folder, inside another folder, with a name that was designed to look boring. Inside it were 62 screenshots, text messages, and photographs. Her fiancé had been sleeping with her maid of honor for 7 months. Emily closed the laptop and sat at the kitchen table for a long time. For most people, the decision would be immediate. Cancel everything, lose the deposits, let the world know. But Emily's father had already paid $45,000 for the venue, the catering, and the flowers. The contract was unambiguous. No refunds within 30 days of the event. The event was in 22 days. If she canceled, her family lost $45,000. Her fiancé and her maid of honor would play the victim. He would tell everyone she had a breakdown and called it off. The story would be his to control. Emily decided the story would be hers. She went to her final dress fitting with her maid of honor sitting beside her, sipping champagne and telling her she looked stunning. She finalized the seating arrangements. She approved the menu. She wrote a handwritten thank you note to the florist. She was, by every outward appearance, a radiant, happy bride. What no one knew was that Emily had been working late nights on a separate project. Emily was a graphic designer by profession. She had been responsible for designing every piece of print material for the wedding, including the elegant cream-colored menus placed at every seat in the reception hall. At the bottom of each menu, in a small but clearly visible box, was a QR code. The text above it read, "Scan for a special message from the bride and groom." The original plan was for the code to link to a digital photo album of their relationship. The night before the ceremony, Emily changed the destination. She had spent 2 weeks building a clean, simple website. It loaded on mobile in under 3 seconds. It had 1 page. That page contained every text message, every photograph, and every piece of evidence from the hidden folder on her fiancé's laptop. She organized it chronologically. She added dates. She made it impossible to misinterpret.
Story number 3. The Smart Home Trap. Jason was proud of his house. Over the course of 18 months, he had invested $10,000 transforming it into a fully integrated smart home. Every light, every lock, the thermostat, the security cameras, the surround sound system, the garage door, all of it connected to a single app on his phone. Jason was the administrator. He held the master password. His wife Maya, who was not particularly interested in technology, had a limited access account that let her adjust the lights and change the thermostat. Nothing more. Jason genuinely believed Maya had no idea how the deeper layers of the system worked. He was also having an affair with a woman from his office, which he had been conducting exclusively inside his own home on the weekends when Maya visited her parents. What Jason did not know was that 3 months earlier, Maya had sat down at their shared desktop computer, found the master dashboard still logged in, and spent 2 hours learning exactly how every single component of the system worked. She did not change anything. She did not alert him. She just read the manual, memorized the interface, and closed the browser. On a Friday in March, Maya told Jason she was driving to her mother's house for the weekend. She packed her bag, she kissed him on the cheek, she pulled out of the driveway and drove to a hotel 8 miles away. She ordered room service. She opened her laptop. She connected to the home network remotely. At 9:14 that evening, the front door sensor showed the door opening. The living room motion detector registered 2 people. The kitchen light was turned on manually. Maya poured herself a glass of wine. She opened the master control panel. She reviewed her options carefully, and then, with the composure of someone who had been planning this for a very long time, she began. She started by removing Jason's administrative access from his phone. His app went gray. He was locked out of the system he had built entirely by himself. She engaged the smart deadbolts on every external door in the house. She did not block the manual override handles. That would have been dangerous and illegal. But she did set the system to require an 8-digit administrator code on the keypad to release the deadbolt from the outside, a code that only she now controlled. She set the smart thermostat to 52 degrees. She killed every light in the house simultaneously. Inside, Jason grabbed his phone. His app showed a loading spinner and then an error. He tried the front door. The manual lever worked fine from inside. They could leave if they chose. But Jason's instinct was not to leave. His instinct was to fix it. He walked to the door panel in the dark, stabbing at buttons, and could not understand why nothing was responding. Then, Maya activated the home's surround sound system at full volume. She did not play white noise or an alarm. She played a voice recording she had made sitting in her car in the hotel parking lot 2 hours earlier. Her own voice filled every room of the house at a volume that made the windows vibrate. "Jason, I know exactly who is in that house with you. The police have been called. Everything happening inside is being recorded.
The external doors will require an administrator code to open from the outside until the officers arrive. I would use this time to think very carefully about what you want to say." She played that recording on a continuous loop for 25 minutes. Jason made a decision that made everything significantly worse. He attempted to force one of the ground floor windows. The shatter sensor triggered immediately, sending an automatic emergency dispatch to the local police department. The officers who arrived found Jason in the driveway, in his socks, in 39-degree weather, trying to explain the situation to two very patient and very unsympathetic patrolmen. The incident was documented in full in the responding officer's report. Maya's divorce attorney received that report 10 days later. It contained the date, the time, the confirmation of a second occupant in the residence, and Jason's own verbal confirmation to the officers of what had been occurring in the house. It was, as her attorney described it in court, a remarkably complete piece of documentation. Story number 4. The Stolen Heirloom. Every person who has ever been betrayed asks the same question eventually. How far were they willing to go? For Rachel, the answer arrived on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon at a downtown restaurant. Her grandmother's ring had been in the family for 60 years. It was a vintage diamond set in platinum, appraised at $22,000 and worth something closer to everything to Rachel because of what it represented. She wore it on special occasions and kept it in a velvet box in her bedside table. One morning, it was gone. Her husband, Greg, helped her search for 3 hours. He checked every drawer, every bathroom surface, every coat pocket. He suggested the gym. He suggested the bathroom drain. He was so thorough and so genuinely distressed that he convinced Rachel it must have been misplaced. On his recommendation, they filed a report with their insurance company. 3 months passed. Rachel was having a working lunch at an upscale restaurant near her office when she looked across the dining room and saw Greg at a corner table. He was leaning toward a woman Rachel did not recognize, speaking quietly, touching her hand. Rachel moved to a different seat, partially hidden by a structural column, and watched. When the woman reached across the table and the light from the window caught her left hand, Rachel went completely still. She recognized the setting before she recognized the stone, the distinctive platinum prongs, the specific cut. It was her grandmother's ring. Greg had not misplaced it. He had taken it from her bedside table, carried it out of their house, and placed it on another woman's finger as a proposal. Rachel took out her phone. She zoomed the camera lens to its maximum and took 7 photographs. The woman's hand, the ring on her finger, Greg's face in the same frame. She took them with the steadiness of someone who understands that what they are holding is not a phone, but evidence. She left the restaurant. She drove to the police department. She sat down with a detective from the property crimes unit and presented the following: the photographs from the restaurant, the original appraisal certificate with the diamond serial number, the insurance report Greg had helped her file, and a written timeline of events. She explained that her husband had reported the ring lost while it was in his possession, filed that report jointly with their insurance company, and she had now located the ring on the hand of a woman she did not know in the company of her husband. The detective looked at the documentation for a long moment. Then he explained to Rachel that what she had described involved 2 separate criminal matters. The theft of property valued over $20,000 was a felony. The joint insurance filing, made with knowledge that the property had not actually been lost, was insurance fraud. 4 days later, 2 detectives approached Greg's mistress as she was leaving her office building. They explained the situation calmly and professionally. They asked her to remove the ring. When she refused and said her fiancé had purchased it for her, they informed her that it had been reported stolen and that she was currently in possession of felony stolen property. Greg received the call from the precinct within the hour. He had to walk in, sit across from a detective, and state on the record that he had taken the ring from his wife's possession and given it to another woman in order to prevent her mistress from being charged as an accessory. His signed statement was added to the file. Rachel's divorce attorney received a copy of that statement before the proceedings began. The judge reviewed it on the first day of the hearing. Greg left the marriage with a criminal record for theft and fraud, no claim to any shared assets, and a mistress who had already returned his calls to voicemail by the time the gavel came down.
Before the final story, and this one is the most complete, most calculated, and most devastating takedown in everything we have ever covered, make sure you have subscribed to Venture and Karma. We publish these stories every single week, and the next video is already in production. Subscribe now, then keep watching. Story number 5, The Corporate Checkmate. Sarah was a senior corporate accountant. She understood money the way a surgeon understands anatomy, not theoretically, but structurally. She knew how assets moved, where they hid, what the paper trail looked like when someone was trying to make something disappear. Her husband David was a high-earning sales executive with an expensive lifestyle and complete confidence in his own intelligence. He was the kind of man who talked loudly about how things worked because he had never been seriously challenged by someone who actually knew more than him. Sarah found out about the affair on a Sunday morning when David left his phone face up on the kitchen counter and walked to the garage. The messages were from his personal trainer. They had been going on for 11 months. Sarah looked at the messages for approximately 90 seconds. She put the phone back exactly where she found it. She made coffee. She handed David a cup when he came back inside and asked him how his run had been. She spent the following week not crying. She spent it reading. Sarah knew that in their state, infidelity had limited impact on divorce settlements. David would hire an aggressive attorney. He would drag the process out. He would make it expensive and exhausting, and she would eventually accept less than she was entitled to just to make it stop. But Sarah also had access to something more useful than emotions. She had access to their complete financial history. David had received a $200,000 year-end performance bonus 6 weeks earlier, a bonus that Sarah knew about because she had helped him celebrate over a dinner that now felt like a completely different lifetime. What Sarah discovered when she began reviewing the accounts carefully was that the money was no longer in any account she could see. She traced the transfer through 3 routing numbers across 2 business days. The funds had been moved into a newly created LLC registered under the name of David's college roommate, a man Sarah had met twice at barbecues and who had no meaningful business operation of any kind. David had structured it as a business investment. Sarah recognized immediately what this was. The legal term is fraudulent conveyance, the deliberate movement of marital assets in anticipation of a divorce, designed to hide them from division proceedings. It is not a gray area, it is a crime. She said nothing. She did not move any money. She did not change her behavior in any way that David could detect. She hired a forensic accountant with experience in corporate financial investigations. She hired a family law attorney with a specific reputation for asset recovery cases. She gave them both everything she had and told them to build something that could survive any challenge David's lawyers brought. They spent 3 weeks building it. Then, Sarah waited for David to make his move. On a Wednesday evening, David sat her down at the dining room table. He had prepared what he believed was a compassionate but firm speech about growing apart and needing something different. He slid the divorce papers across the table with the gentle manner of a man who has already decided the outcome and is simply managing the administrative formality.
The settlement he was offering was shockingly, almost insultingly low. He cited vague investment losses. He expressed regret. He told her he hoped they could handle this with dignity. Sarah looked at the papers. She looked at him. She let her eyes fill slightly, which required no acting because it was genuinely sad that someone she had loved for 9 years had become this person across the table from her. She told him she was heartbroken. She told him she didn't want to fight. She signed the initial acknowledgement page, which her attorney had already told her was not binding at this stage. David walked out of the house that evening feeling like a man who had just handled something difficult with grace and efficiency. He texted his mistress from the driveway. 3 weeks later, one business day before the settlement was scheduled to be finalized, Sarah's attorney filed an emergency motion of financial disclosure with the court. Attached to the motion was a 41-page forensic accounting dossier documenting every step of the $200,000 transfer, the LLC structure, the routing numbers, the dates, and the legal analysis explaining precisely why it constituted fraudulent conveyance under state law. The judge reviewed the filing overnight. The next morning, she was not warm. She invalidated the proposed settlement entirely. As a judicial penalty for the deliberate concealment of marital assets, she awarded Sarah 100% of the hidden $200,000 as a separate recovery, independent of the standard asset division. She ordered David to pay every dollar of Sarah's legal fees. She noted in the record that the court viewed the behavior with serious disapproval. David's attorney requested a recess. David sat at the defendant's table looking at the 41 pages with the particular expression of a man who has realized, too late, that he was not the smartest person in the room. But Sarah was not finished. Because David had used his corporate email account and his employer's internal servers to coordinate the LLC formation with his friend, there was a clean, documented record of him using company resources to commit financial fraud. Sarah's attorney compiled that specific portion of the court record into a separate package and forwarded it anonymously and entirely legally to the Ethics and Compliance Board of David's employer. A company that employs a senior sales executive who commits financial fraud in his personal life carries a material liability risk. David's own legal team reviewed the documents. They reached their own conclusion. David was terminated within 48 hours of the filing. His termination voided his unvested stock options package and his company pension, both of which he had been counting on as the primary components of his post-divorce financial plan. David walked away from a 9-year marriage with no savings, no job, a criminal referral on his professional record, a court judgment requiring him to repay $200,000 plus legal fees, and a luxury apartment lease he could no longer support on zero income. He entered that dining room 3 weeks earlier, believing he was 3 signatures away from a clean escape. He had underestimated the woman who knew exactly how money moved, exactly where it was hiding, and exactly how to make sure the right people found it. 5 stories. 5 people who were counted out by the person who was supposed to know them best, and 5 people who responded not with noise, but with patience. Not with accusations, but with documentation. Not with chaos, but with a level of calm, focused execution that the person across the table simply had no answer for. Here's the thing about the kind of revenge that actually works. It is never about anger. Anger is loud and expensive, and it hands control to the other person. Real leverage is quiet. It is built in the hours when no one is watching. It is ready before it is ever deployed. The most dangerous person in any of these stories was never the one doing the cheating. It was always the one who already knew and hadn't said a word yet. If these stories hit you somewhere real, hit the like button. It costs you nothing, and it helps this channel reach people who might genuinely need to hear that being underestimated is not the end of the story. It is often just the beginning. Subscribe to Venture and Karma, and tell me in the comments which of these 5 hit hardest: the one-way ticket to Paris, the wedding QR code, or Sarah sitting in a bank at 9 in the morning, 55 minutes ahead of a man who thought he had already won. I read every comment, every single one. Keep your eyes open, and I will see you in the next one.